Have you ever reached that point? The point of complete and utter depletion. You feel like a well that has run dry, a battery that is fully drained, a jar that holds nothing but dust and crumbs. You look at the needs around you, your family, your work, your church, a hurting world, and you feel a profound and painful sense of inadequacy. A voice inside you whispers, "I have nothing left to offer. I'm too tired, too empty, too broken, too insignificant." It's a quiet kind of despair, a feeling of being spiritually and emotionally bankrupt. Our world values what we can produce. It celebrates strength, abundance, and output. We are measured by what we can bring to the table. And we often carry this mindset into our faith, believing that our worth to God is tied to our ability to serve, to give, to perform. So when we arrive at this place of emptiness, a deep shame can set in. We feel we have failed God because we have nothing left to give Him. But what if I told you that your emptiness is not a disqualification? What if it is, in fact, the perfect prerequisite for God to do His most powerful work? What if the God of the universe is not looking for your fullness, but for your willing emptiness? What if your nothing is the exact raw material He loves to use to create a miracle? Let me tell you a story. In 1 Kings chapter 17, we meet a widow in a town called Zarephath. A severe famine was ravaging the land. When the prophet Elijah meets her, she is at the absolute end of her rope. She is gathering a few sticks to go home and prepare one final tiny meal for herself and her son, after which they will lie down and wait to die. She has, quite literally, almost nothing left. And it is at this moment that the prophet makes what seems like an impossible, almost cruel request. "First, make a small loaf of bread for me from what you have." Imagine her position. He was asking her to give away the very last bit of hope she had. He was asking her to give from her nothing. But in an incredible act of faith, she obeyed. She took her last handful of flour and her last little bit of oil, and she gave to the man of God first. And what happened? God unleashed a miracle of multiplication. The Bible says, "The jar of flour was not used up, and the jug of oil did not run dry." Her obedience with the little she had, with her emptiness, became the very channel for God's unending supply. God did not need her abundance. He needed her empty, obedient hands. We see this principle again in the New Testament at the feeding of the 5,000. Jesus and His disciples are faced with a massive, hungry crowd. The disciples do a quick inventory and come back to Jesus with a logical, reasonable report found in John chapter 6. "We have nothing here except 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish." They saw only lack. They saw what was not enough. Their resources were laughably inadequate for the need in front of them. And what did Jesus do? He didn't scold them for their lack. He didn't magically create food out of thin air, though He could have. He said, "Bring them here to me." He took their not enough. He took their inadequacy. He took their nothing, and He blessed it, broke it, and gave it back to them. And with that multiplied nothing, they fed a multitude with 12 baskets of leftovers. Jesus is not asking you to be the source. He is asking you to bring your meager resources, your emptiness, your not enough, to Him, the source, and watch what He does with it. God seems to specialize in this. He loves to work through human weakness and inadequacy so that there is no doubt that the glory belongs to Him alone. He told the great warrior Gideon to shrink his army from thousands down to a mere 300 men before facing a massive enemy, so that no one could say their own strength had saved them. The Apostle Paul, one of the greatest Christians who ever lived, struggled with a thorn in the flesh, a persistent weakness he begged God to remove. God's answer was no. Instead, God told him, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. My power is made perfect in your not enough." Paul's conclusion is a life-changing secret for anyone who feels empty. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Our emptiness is not a barrier to God's power. It is the stage upon which His power is most perfectly and beautifully displayed. So what do you do when you feel you have nothing left to give? First, you must be brutally honest with God. Stop pretending. Stop trying to muster up strength you don't have. The most powerful prayer you can pray in this season is, God, I'm empty. I have nothing left. I am completely dependent on you. This honesty is the doorway to His grace. Second, identify your 5 loaves and 2 fish. What is the one small, seemingly insignificant thing you can do? Maybe you don't have the energy to lead a ministry, but can you send an encouraging text to one person? Maybe you can't pray for an hour, but can you offer a 30-second prayer of thanks? Offer your tiny act of faithfulness to God and trust that He is the one who will multiply its impact. And third, give yourself permission to be in a season of receiving. You cannot pour from an empty cup. Perhaps this season of emptiness is God's gentle invitation for you to simply stop, to be still, and to let Him pour into you His love, His rest, His grace, His word. True ministry always flows from an overflow of what God has first poured into us. Your worth is not in what you produce. You are not a machine. You are a beloved child. The God who created the entire universe out of nothing is not intimidated by your emptiness. In fact, it is the very canvas He loves to paint on. Offer Him your empty hands today. He is ready to fill them.